Welcome to Life-Changing Challengers, the podcast where passion meets purpose. I'm Brad Minus, your host, guiding you through stories of transformation and triumph, from endurance feats to overcoming adversity. Our guests defy the limits and inspire action. Ready to ignite your desire and incinerate your barriers? Join us. Your journey to the extraordinary begins now. And welcome back to another episode of Life-Changing Challengers. I have the distinct honor of having author and blogger Cathlelina Duvert on with us today. She has written a novel called The Box. But anyway, Cathlelina, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much, Brad. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you are so welcome. And thank you for participating and coming on the show. I really appreciate it. So, Cathlelina, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood? Maybe what was the complement of your family, where you grew up, and maybe tell us a little bit about what Cathlelina was like as a kid.
Okay, sure. No problem. So I come from a Haitian family. My parents were from Haiti, we're from Haiti. And there was three of us. My brother, who's older by 3 years, and I have a twin sister. And we grew up in Queens, New York, born in Brooklyn, raised in Queens. And yeah, our family life was mostly a Haitian household, typical Haitian household. But when we went to school, it was more about learning English and the American way of life. So I kind of consider myself like an Americanized Haitian-American. But we were very, very close with our cousins. My mother was very close to her siblings. So every weekend they would all hang out. And of course, we would hang out by default. And it was like always a big party. We just fell in love with our cousins. And, yeah.
And did they live near you in Queens?
There was one set of cousins who did live like about 20 minutes away. And there was another set of cousins, two other sets of cousins that lived all the way upstate. It took about an hour to get there, and it was always a treat when we would go up there.
Nice. Yeah, I love upstate New York. I think it's freaking gorgeous. So as far as you acclimating into the American way of life, can you give us a quick difference on what you noticed as far as maybe your friends that were born here and raised American versus a Haitian household?
Well, for one thing, we weren't allowed to wear sneakers all the time. My mom, let me scratch that. There were certain ways that we would dress and certain ways that we would behave that my mother was very specific about us not being like any other typical American. We had to respect our elders. And I remember feeling like we were separate from other kids in that we didn't talk back to our parents. We did what our parents told us to do. We were never rude to adults, things of that nature. It was just the way that we behaved that I felt like was different than other American kids that we grew up with.
I grew up that way. Now I'm a little older than you, but yes, no, you wouldn't catch me like these kids today talking back to their parents.
Oh my gosh.
I wouldn't think about it. So I'll make the assumption that when you say that you dressed a certain way, it was probably very conservative.
It was conservative, and it was never what the in style was, what was trendy. Never really anything like that. Like I said, with the sneakers thing, even like my mom would buy us $5 sneakers and we had to be okay with it. Meanwhile, all the other kids were rocking the Nike sneakers and, the Air Jordans and all that stuff. And it was fun.
Yeah. Same way. I'm telling you, until high school, it was like I would get up and get dressed and my parents would let me know. They're like, no. Today you wear the brown shoes. No. All right. Today you can wear your sneakers. Mm-hmm. It was kind of the same thing. So I get that. I totally get that. Did you find that it caused you a little bit of maybe teasing or something as far as your dress goes and that because you were so different?
No, not necessarily because we did go to a Catholic school where uniform was required.
Okay.
So, and we went to Catholic school from kindergarten to 12th grade. And so I didn't really feel like that was on a daily basis. But when it came to like going to parties and stuff like that, that became an issue because I never knew what to wear. I don't really have much of a fashion sense like my sister does. And I was always like really upset in the corner, like, I don't like what I'm wearing, but I couldn't change it because I didn't have anything better in my closet. And everybody else looked really nice, but I just looked frumpy. I thought,
Decent, like a good lesson nowadays versus back then when everybody was doing all this, and we really find out nowadays that that really didn't matter. Back then it mattered. Right now it really doesn't.
yeah, I think about it often. And I think about the way that I am now, even till this day, I realize that I wish I had better things in my closet, but I don't. And I make do with what I have. Just like back in the days, we were okay. I mean, you didn't look cute a certain way, you were still fine.
So did you do any like extracurriculars or anything while you were in school?
No, I was never interested in that. My sister was always into track and she liked to do other things. She was always more outgoing than I was. And I never liked to do anything with anybody. I had social anxiety and I just never wanted to do anything like that. So,
What did you find that you were doing? Like you would come home from school, when most people are going off to track practice or they're going to some sort of extracurricular. What did you end up doing?
homework.
You were digging into your studies.
Yeah,
All right.
that's what I remember doing. I don't remember anything else.
Okay. Well, that's fine. And there's plenty of people that did that. And obviously, you're successful. So did you go to college afterwards?
Yeah. Went to Hofstra University for my undergrad.
Ah, Hofstra. Nice.
Yeah, and I have
Did
a
you-
very interesting story about that too. Actually, I'm a teacher now, and I told my students this just yesterday that when I was applying to go to Hofstra, my guidance counselor, now I was a very average student. Maybe if I got a 80 on an exam or something, it was like, oh my gosh, time to celebrate. I was very average. And when I applied to Hofstra University, my guidance counselor had told me, well, with your grades, you won't get into a school like that. She said, you might as well just apply to maybe a 2-year college. And maybe after that, maybe maybe you can apply to a school like Hofstra. But, so I remember thinking, oh man, that really sucks. And my older cousin was like, how dare your guidance counselor tell you something like that? You should apply anyway. So I did. I applied anyway, and I did end up getting in. And when I told my guidance counselor that I was accepted, she was just like, no, congratulations. I was wrong. But she was just like, oh, I didn't expect that. But yeah.
Did anything, as far as you being a student when you went to Hofstra, did anything change there? Or was it still kind of, you were on that average block, or did you figure out a way that you actually excelled?
I figured out a way to excel. So
What I'm talking about.
yes, that was the first time in my life that I got straight A's in all my.
Wow.
And I think it was just the fact that I was accepted. It was my proud moment that I could up the game for myself, and I found different ways to study, and I did it. I was, and in fact, I remember I handed in paper for my social studies class, and I never liked social studies, but I always did the best that I could. And my social studies teacher wrote a note at the end of my paper. I got an A on it, and he wrote a note saying, I was very impressed with the way that you wrote. I had to look up to see what year you are, and I'm very surprised that you're a freshman and you could do well to tutor some of our juniors and seniors. So I was pretty proud of myself of that. Yeah.
All right, for everybody out there, and since we're talking to an author here, that's called foreshadowing.
I know.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I was a little bit even later of a bloomer, but I was the same way you were. I would A's and B's and C's and stuff in high school. When I got to my first year of college, I almost flunked out, to tell you the truth, because I learned how to party. I ended up leaving school, and I spent a couple of years working. I did a couple of community college classes, and then I went back to the same school. And then I ended up leaving Illinois State University with a 3.85, but that was it, right? You found that maturity your freshman year. Took me a little bit longer, but then I went to grad school like you did and knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
There was a reason for that, though. Did you study education in Hofstra?
No, I didn't. My major was creative writing and literature. I was going to be a world famous author, travel the world, speaking engagements. I was going to be the whole thing, but that didn't happen. When I did graduate, I got a job at a publishing company in the Bronx, and then I worked at a publishing company in Manhattan. I was working in publishing for maybe about 12 years or so. Then that's when I decided to become a teacher.
Wait, so you were working in publishing. You were in the industry that you wanted to be in? You were in the creative writing industry. Okay, maybe you didn't write anything as of yet, but you were in the industry, so you can have all these insights.
Right.
And then you decided to leave to become a teacher.
Yeah.
Can you share why that was?
Well, yeah. At the time, I was writing a novel that I didn't even do anything with anymore. I put it in the drawer, but I had a really great time at the company that I worked for. I really liked everybody that I worked with. I liked my boss and all that stuff. But after a while, my father passed away, and I started thinking about life, and I'm like, there's got to be more to life than this. I started thinking that I needed to use my energy elsewhere. I felt the calling to become a teacher, and that's what did it.
Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Was a good answer. Yeah, because usually you get things like, well, the industry was this, wasn't what I thought it was going to be, so I decided to take the easy way out and do something else, and blah blah blah. And no, that's a great freaking answer. That usually doesn't happen. So that's great. You just felt like there's this calling. And
Yeah.
what are you in? What grade?
I teach 7th graders and 9th graders.
Okay, so like middle school, freshman year of high school. Awesome. So you must be in a school that is kind of like the school that you went to, where is it like every single grade, or is it 7th through 12th?
It's a 6th through 12th school.
6th through 12th.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Nice. And then you get a little bit of both, right? You get a little bit of that high school stuff, and you get a little bit of the middle school. So you get a very variety of kids, I bet.
Yeah, it's interesting. The 7th graders are, I feel, they're so energetic. They're full of life. They're annoying, but it's great to be in their presence on a daily basis. And the 9th graders, I find that they're really quiet. They're more shy or not willing to speak up in class, which is very interesting. But that's what I found with my 9th graders this year.
Interesting. So the freshmen are freaked out probably about if they say something stupid. They're feeling like that they say something stupid,
I think
then
so.
they're going to embarrass themselves in front of their peers.
They just don't care yet. They're just like, they say whatever. Literally, they say whatever comes out of their mouth. And it's like, are you serious? Are you kidding me right now? Are you?
Oh, wow. Okay. So you became a teacher. You had spent 12 years in publishing. I know that from what I've learned about you and a little bit of research that I've done, there was some issues with depression.
Yeah.
Where did that come in? Because right now it sounds like you were living the life.
No. I was in the dark for a very long time. My depression started around when I was 11 or 12 years old, but I had not known I was depressed yet. Whatever I was feeling, I felt like there was something wrong with me. I didn't understand what I was going through. I didn't talk to anyone about it. I kept it to myself because, well, it was just weird. I was just this weird kid who didn't like to go to parties, who didn't like people, who didn't like to do things. And I was always crying. I was upset. I was angry. Yeah. So I kept it to myself and I hid it. I hid it behind smiles. I hid it behind work. I hid it behind anything that I could because nobody knew what I was going through except my sister because she lives with me, And it wasn't until I was in my mid-20s that I realized that I was suffering with depression. And that's when I started writing my novel that really helped me to look at what I was going through in a new light, if you will. So I started writing the novel because I didn't understand what I was going through. So I wanted to write something about a woman who's going through the same issues as I was. That's what I called it at the time, issues, because I didn't know what it was. So when I was diagnosed with depression, I was like, okay, that's what my main character is going through. And so I was able to use my feelings of depression, my experience with depression, and put it in and give it all to my main character to see what she would do with it. And what came from it was what I felt was a very interesting, heartwarming, very powerful story. But in the meantime, so when I was about 25 years old, when I was diagnosed with depression, I started talking to a therapist, and I was also prescribed, I'm going to say Zoloft. I was prescribed Zoloft. And for a minute, it was helping me. And I was very proud of the fact that I was taking these happy pills, That's what I like to call that. And then that was let me see. And then that's when I left my job as in publishing. And because I left my job, I wasn't a teacher just yet. I didn't have insurance. So I couldn't continue with the therapy, and I could not continue with the medication. So when I finally did get a job as a teacher, it was a few years later when I finally got a job as a teacher and I had insurance again. But I was feeling kind of okay. So I didn't feel the need to go back to therapy. I don't know what happened. I don't know how I broke down. I don't know what caused it. But then at some point I was like, I need to go back. I need to go back to therapy. And when I went back to therapy, I had a new therapist and she never mentioned anything about prescription drugs, about medication. And so I was like, okay, maybe I'm going to try it without the medication.
Yes.
Okay. So while I was doing talk therapy, which I believe in 100%, I was also in communication with two of my cousins and my sister. We would all challenge each other. We challenge each other to exercise regularly. We challenge each other to do meditations every day. We challenge each other to listen to motivational videos and read self-help books. And we would pick one book. It was Morning Minute by Hal Elrod.
Yes.
Yes. We chose that book to read together, and then we incorporated all the strategies that he mentioned in the book, and we would get together every week and talk about it. And little by little, I realized that the talk therapy, the meditations, the motivational videos, the morning minutes, all of those combined together helped me deal with depression.
So did you end up back on medication?
No. I haven't been on medication since.
That's huge. Because, in today's society where the pharmaceutical industry is getting rich off of anti-anxiety and drugs for depression. It's ridiculous, the amount of money. So the fact that you were able to come in and say, okay, with a combination of these strategies, you were able to stay off of pharmaceuticals.
I feel that way too. Now, I'm not going to discount medication because I believe there's a place for it, right? And there are some people who may not be willing just yet to do all these, to incorporate all these strategies into their daily lives. Now, this was something I was doing every single day. Every day. The Morning Minute is about waking up earlier in order to incorporate these into your day. And that's what I did. I already woke up I think 5 o'clock in the morning to get to work. So in order to incorporate this, I was getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I was committed to it. I was invested in it. I really wanted to try this, especially since I was doing it with other people. So it was a small community of us doing it. It wasn't like I was doing this on my own. So I had that help. I had that support. And so I want to say that it's so important to do what you can, but you need that level of support, even if it's just one person.
So find strategies that work, and then your support will keep you in those strategies. Because I find that, because I'm an endurance coach, so I keep my clients, I help them go through, get to the finish line of marathons and ultra marathons and Ironman triathlons and all this crazy stuff that most people think they're crazy for doing. I help them get through that. And a lot of them hit goals on the way to the finish line. A lot of them are first timers and they decide that they're going to do this race. And some of them in the midst of it, they're like, oh, I'd like to lose some weight. I'd like to get a little toner. A lot of them, it is a mental thing as well. The ability to hit this challenge really helps the mentality. But the training, the fact that they get up every morning and just like you, most of them, especially out here in Florida, if they're going to train and train well and they're going to train outside, they need to get up early and do it then. And I've found a lot of them have gotten through some major life issues, and a couple of them through some depression incidents in their life by continuing to train on the, as far as moving their body and it being physical, just like you were saying, meditation, your morning routine, which Hal Elrod actually coined the phrase.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing right now. It's a huge trend. You'll actually find it on Twitter or X, and it'll say the trend for the day, the trending thing, morning routine. And he coined the phrase. So you're in good company by starting that book. I totally believe it. But that's how, as far as coaching goes, I can tell them what to do. I can get them to their goals, but they got to follow the plan. Them following the plan and doing their notes and then circling back with me, that's their support line, right? So it's like
you. The journey.
Yeah. Are you still doing the morning routine every morning? And
so no, I'm not, but I've incorporated them. I don't do them all, right? I've incorporated some of them, like the meditation I started doing again, the motivational, well, I still read the self-help books. I listen to self-help books now. And actually, you know what actually I'm listening to now is a book called The Body Keeps the Score, about how we hold trauma in our bodies. And it was just talking about, I just finished the chapter on how there's so much research on how medication helps depressives, but there's very little research on how other alternatives can help people with depression that choose or that don't take medication. So I found that very, very interesting. But I do the self-help books, and now writing, I believe, is like my it's what helps me survive.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So I've written this book, and I started blogging about my depression and how I've overcome it and things that I've done to overcome it, which I'm going to put it all together, because the blog that I created was called Kathy's Cross: A Depressive's Positive Perspective. And I'm going to put that all into a book and create a journal out of it. I have these great ideas for it, but I feel like writing is one of those things that has helped me when I stopped doing the daily meditations and the affirmations and all that stuff. I've switched one thing for another, and I feel like it's still helping me. And don't get me wrong, I have not cured this thing. I'm not cured, but it has helped me deal with my most depressing stages.
That's amazing, but it's still a strategy. Yeah, that's the whole thing. Before, you had a strategy where you did your meditations and stuff. Now you're doing meditations and you're writing. So it's just swapping one strategy for another. Now, the nice thing is, because you're blogging, not only are you releasing it, is what I'm starting to, and this is all taking in what you're telling me and kind of like spitting it back out a little bit differently. What you just said about how your body holds your depression, right? And it's like buried in the cells. And I believe that.
Yeah.
My people, the people on my roster, they sweat it out, literally. And I can tell you stories about some of my clients who have done 100-mile races and, running 100 miles. And at miles 75 or 80, they just break down and they just cry. And it's because their body is so exhausted that they release all of that, And at 80 miles, you've been on the road for like 25 hours, 26 hours you've been running. And now at that point, it's just so exhausted that it releases it. And a lot of them get spooked because it's your emotions that are just coming out. Yeah. And they don't understand it. But when they're done, they feel like this sense of relief that is beyond anything they've ever felt before in their life. You have this relief of, you pay that last credit card statement bill, right? You pay off your house, you get that relief. They say it's like 100 to 150 times better feeling than that, because it's really this release of everything they've been holding on to. So I get it. You're releasing it every day. Yeah, exactly. And I've even written about how I release it onto the page. I keep it trapped on the page so that it no longer torments me, And I think it's so important when people ask me, well, what would you recommend to some people who are feeling this way? And I say, first of all, I'm no expert. I'm only an expert with what worked with me. But I really feel like if you choose your passion, find your passion, whatever it is, and just like pour yourself into it, and then you'll feel that relief. You will feel that release. I really believe in that. So as far as your passion goes, now, are you going to therapy still? No, and only because the therapist that I had for 7 years, who was really, really good for me, she no longer takes my insurance. And believe it or not, I've had a hard time finding another therapist, because a lot of therapy right now is like texting or emailing. And I'm like, no, I want to speak one-on-one with someone. So it's really weird. I'm having a hard time finding a new therapist, but I do want to continue therapy. I feel like at this point in my life, right now, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed and I need to talk it out. And that was kind of where I was getting to. I just wanted to make sure that, all right, you don't have a therapist at the moment, but you're looking for one. It's not like you wanted to stop. And that was where I wanted to go from there, because I think it's a good thing for everybody. I don't think you need to be depressed to have a therapist. I don't think that you need to, I think you could be 100% right with the world and feel like you're the happiest person on earth, and you're still going to get something out of it.
100% agree with you. 100%.
So yeah, and that's kind of where I wanted to go with that. And you answered exactly how I thought you would. So that's great. That's fantastic. But I like the combination of it, right?
Yeah.
So you're blogging. What I love about it too is that you're also helping other people, right?
Yep.
Well, and of course, you guys got to check out her Instagram, and we'll talk about that towards the end of the show. But in her Instagram, she does these great little monologues where she talks about her day, and then she gives her lesson for that day to you. And it's really, really powerful. So you need to check out her Instagram, and her Instagram is at Cathlelina Duvert, and we'll put that in the show notes for you, but you definitely need to see that. Also, your outfit at your launch. I mean, it was this whole like 70s thing, but that's what it looked like.
Actually, on Halloween, it was Halloween, and I was at a flea market type of thing, and they were like, "Feel free to dress in costume." I was like, "Hey, why not? I love stuff like that. I love dressing in costume."
Yeah, because I saw it. I was like, it looked like a launch, because you found your poster and you're sitting next to your poster for your book. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. What a great way to launch the book. But it actually was a few months afterwards. Yeah. Okay, no, that's great. So because you launched like what, is July 2nd or something? Yeah. So fantastic. Right before the 4th of July, you've got a date to be thinking about it. The book is called The Box, and I've read the first few chapters, and the writing is your teachers when you were in creative writing, they were absolutely 100% true. The writing will like, I unfortunately was not at that point where I was able to get into it at that point in time. I was trying to do enough research so that I could make this presentation and present you to the world. So I got enough in, but I got to tell you, I'm going to finish it because I want to finish it. There's nothing even better, but some of the dialogue and the adjectives, what is the word I'm looking for? The description, but it's the environment that you create. Okay. There's an aura that you're delving into Mia. Mm-hmm. And Mia has got, some issues, but she understands. And you start to be, even though you're writing it because you wrote it in the third person, you still feel like you could feel what Mia's feeling. But you kind of get into it. And that's only in the first few chapters. So I imagine what the rest of it's like. It's 310 pages and your chapters are kind of short. So obviously I didn't read a ton of it. I promised you. And I will put a review on Amazon.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, absolutely. 100%. This is what I do, right? And you said that you started that early.
Yeah.
So that's like 10, 12, 15 years in the making?
So no, it's not. Okay. So I started it when I was about 25 years old, and it took me 25 years to publish it. So yeah. I know. I don't look like I'm 50, but I
Ladies and gentlemen, do you think this woman's 50? Do you think this woman's 50? Do you have any reason to believe that she's 50? I don't think so. I think she's trying to pull one over on us.
I owe it to my parents. They had good genes.
Yeah.
So
I would have never.
I just celebrated my 50th birthday. Yeah, in July 30th.
All right. Well, that's fantastic. Yeah. No, I'm 2 weeks from celebrating 54. So.
Oh, we're in club.
Yeah. Yeah. We're over the hill there. But we're accelerating into greatness.
Oh, there you go. I really felt like it was important so when I first wrote it, I wanted to publish it all the way back then, but mind you, it took me years to really get into it because like I'm a teacher and every summer I do have time to work on it. But what was I doing in the summers? I was busy being depressed. I couldn't look at it. I couldn't get up maybe because it was too close to what I was feeling, but I picked it up again about 8 years ago and I looked at it and I was like, I have to bring this out into the world. And it was about 8 years ago when I really started being serious about it again. And I had 2 editors look through it. I had beta readers. I wanted this to be the best book that it could be. And I wanted to get an agent and get it traditionally published, but I felt like, it's going to take a long time again, because it could take me like 2 years to get an agent and then another 2 years to get it published. And I was like, that'll be like well until I'm 55 or something. So I was like, you know what? Let me just self-publish it. Let me just bring it out into the world. It's more important that at least a few people read it than nobody reads it.
Well, I congratulate you on that because it's a wonderful, wonderful book so far. And I believe there's no reason for it not to continue and just get better as it goes through. Because you mentioned that you had started writing. Did you say you started writing stuff like when you were 11?
Yeah.
Book that's in the drawer?
No, the book that's in the drawer, I wrote it through my college years.
Okay.
And right after, when I gave that up, I think I spent maybe 5 years on it. And I was just like, oh, I'm not really interested in that anymore. That's when I really wanted to write something that was meaningful for me.
Okay.
The other book that I started was meaningful, but wanted something more personal. And that's when I started writing the box.
So any chance that you'll finish them?
I don't think so. I'm done with them. But you know what's interesting? I went into my storage unit a couple of months ago so I could find something. And I discovered like a bunch of poems and short stories that I wrote that was describing my depression. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I didn't even remember writing these, And it was just like, it seems like ever since I was younger, I was always writing. I was writing even before I knew that I loved to write. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. No, and I get that. I tended to like to write as well. My father sat me down at the age of 3 and gave me those little tiny books. Those ones are like this thick and they're like children's books, and made me learn how to read. I walked into kindergarten knowing how to read, right? And it's not because I was like gifted, because I'm not. It was because my dad sat me down on the couch and he taught me my ABCs and he made me sound things out. And so I already had phonetics walking into kindergarten. The stories that I've gotten from that time, because the kindergarten was part of a like early development child care type of deal, right? To shut me up, the child care professionals would say, hey, Brad, and they'd give me a piece of paper and a pencil and they'd say, write me a story. My parents were like, yeah, that's how they got you to shut up sometimes. Or if you were running around like an animal, they would say, hey, write me a story. And I wouldn't talk back to my elders. I wouldn't tell them no. They were the ones in charge. So that's how they got me to shut up. They were just like, hey, Brad, come here. And they would give me this piece of paper. And, the piece of paper with the lines that were like this big. And they gave me this big giant pencil. And it was like one of those big giant pencils that you can rest on your shoulder as you're writing. And they say, write me a story. And I would write them a story. Now, my handwriting sucked, but it had and my parents told me that it did have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It wasn't just Mrs. Potter went to the store, she bought this, and that's it. You know what I mean? It was a once upon a time and at the end, and there was all the stuff in the middle. And I was like, wow, I'm like, I didn't know I had it in me. So, but I get it. And now I do podcasts and blogging as well. So I hear you. Yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up because I totally forgot all about that. But see what I mean about you making some comparisons and stuff, and it just flows. So we get to know a little bit about each other. But I think it's amazing that you have come out of, some things that really cripple people. And obviously, as you said, you couldn't write your book because the depression was crippling you during the summer. That's a good question. So do you feel like your teaching is also a way of keeping you out of depression as well?
Oh, definitely. And let me tell you something. I get along great with the other teachers. The students are fine. We joke around. And I feel like because I'm a teacher, everybody expects teachers to have these great adventures during the summer because they have the whole summer off, right? I didn't want to do that. I was this person who preferred to stay home. I felt like I needed to do things in the summer because this is what everybody was expecting of me. Little did I realize that I was suffering from a slight case of agoraphobia, the fear of going outside. that was crippling to me as well. So on top of being depressed, there were times when I was like, okay, today I'm definitely going to go outside for a walk. And then it comes to the point where I open the door and I'm like, no, I don't want to go outside. It was to the point one time where I actually called my sister at work and I said, I don't know what's wrong with me. I want to leave the apartment, but I can't. I just can't do it. Yeah. I never really did. So one of the things that I did do was I tried to trick myself into having a reason to go out. Because if I had a reason to go to the mall or a reason to go to the store, I'm fine. I'm okay with that. But just to go outside, just walk around or do nothing, and just to walk at the park, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
What?
Yeah. And even till this day, I don't really do these things on my own. But now I have other things to occupy my time. Like on days off, like I could stay inside all day long writing and I'm fine. Even if it's a gorgeous day outside, I'm good. Inside my apartment, it's like pretty dark. So I didn't really get over that. And even when I had a puppy, I was okay walking her to the park and all that stuff because I'm doing something. I'm walking my dog. But if I'm going to go to the park all alone by myself, for what? Why? No, I'd rather stay in. I'm not going to say it was weird. That was just how I dealt with things. And so during the summers, I had that to contend with. Like, what's wrong with me? The depression that I was feeling and just like really like immersing myself into things like watching movies and reading a book instead of actually sitting down to write and dealing with what I was.
You had your own form of escapism, but you escaped to your own house.
Yeah.
And stayed there.
Yeah.
Huh. But you're still saying that you would, even now, you have a day off, you'd rather stay at home and write.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But you're writing.
Yeah, I'm writing.
You've got a purpose.
Yeah.
There's a purpose there where before you weren't leaving because you didn't have you only would leave if you had a purpose, but when you were staying in, you didn't have a purpose either.
Yeah.
Like that would cause me to be depressed.
Yeah. But here's the thing. I never dealt with that issue. So that's one of the things that I would have to talk about in therapy. Because even though I now stay in with a purpose, I still have not dealt with why I'm afraid to go out and just be out by myself. I don't want to go to the movies by myself. Why am I like this? Right?
Yeah.
There's a reason. I still haven't dealt with that.
But you know what? That's self-actualization right there. And that's a lot of what's going on today is people don't understand about themselves. You know what I mean? They're not honest enough with themselves, sit there and say that they do have this issue, and you know what the issue is, right? You know the first thing to stop to solving a problem is identifying it.
Yeah.
So you got that point and you have a strategy to get there. It's just like stuff, finding a therapist that you connect with so that you could deal with it. I don't have an issue with that. I think that at least you've got it there and you can compartmentalize it, right? Obviously, you're doing that. You're talking with me right now and you got a big smile on your face. So It sounds like you're on your way to taking care of that. So, and I wish you all the luck to getting that done. And I know you will because you conquered all the rest of the things. So conquered it. And like you said, you didn't cure it, but you conquered it. And that's great. And what you've told us today about the ways and strategies to dealing with it without medication is so valuable to people that it's just going to help so many people just to know that, okay, well, listen, she tried meditation, she tried writing, she tried this. Let me try this for 30 days. Let me try this. Maybe put them together, and I think just some things that you laid out for us, I think is going to be, it's valuable to people. And I think it's going to really, really resonate. And I really appreciate you being so forthright in this interview. So I really appreciate it. So Cathlelina, she has a book out. It's called The Box. It is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and you can get that. And I will make sure that there's links in the show notes. Again, also you can find her at Cathlelina Duvert. That's Duvert on Instagram. That you need to check out. I don't care what anybody says. Go through and you'll see all of her videos of her just having a nice conversation with the camera. Listen to all of them. They're all fabulous. And don't forget to check out her Halloween picture with her in 70s gear. Look at with her poster because it's really cool. So you got to check that out. And then she has a webpage, CathlelinaDuvert.kit.com, and that will give you more information on the box. And are you doing a newsletter?
I do have a newsletter. If people go onto CathlelinaDuvert.kit.com, the page, that one, it's a landing page, and what they can do is through that landing page they can order my novel, and then they could subscribe to my newsletter.
So, yeah. And then you can see that it asks you to put your email address in there. She doesn't spam you. You hit subscribe and you go from there. And then there's a bunch of links to where you can get, and then the rest of her socials, which I'll also copy and put into the show notes. You'll also find on lifechangingchallengers.com. You'll also find a blog post that corresponds with this episode, and you'll see the show notes along with, of course, on YouTube and Apple and Spotify. But that being said, if you are watching this on YouTube, please go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, and the notification bell so you'll always know when we drop a new episode. Then if you're on Apple or if you're on Spotify, if you can just leave us a review. I don't even care if it's a good review. Even if you give me a bad review, I have some, I've got some feedback, and I can make and evolve this podcast. And I appreciate that. So Cathlelina, thank you so much for sharing some time with us today. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you, Brad, so much for making this conversation so interesting. I really appreciate you inviting me here.
Oh, and I appreciate you being here. But for me, for Cathlelina, and for the rest of you, we'll see you in the next one. Well, that wraps up another episode of Life-Changing Challengers. I'm your host, Brad Minus, saying thank you for joining us on this journey of transformation. If today's stories inspired you, please take a moment to review, share, and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps us reach more listeners and create an even bigger impact. Remember, every challenge is a chance to grow. Until next time, keep pushing, keep challenging, and never stop pursuing your extraordinary.